It's underneath here.
We good?
Yep. Okay. Mitch, do you want to open up?
Sorry, I just choked on my coffee. So I actually this week has been a little interesting. The Lord's been doing some really cool stuff here. Tuesday, our whole day got wrecked because the Lord showed up.
It was a good wrecking.
It was a good wrecking.
Yeah.
So ruined the whole schedule, all this stuff. And so, and just a lot of things going on. And today, we've been talking about wanting to just lay out the practicals of the upcoming 21-day fast, the Sacred Assembly. So laying out some of the specifics of why we're fasting, what are we fasting for, what are the details of it, what's going on in the midst, what is fasting, even laying out specific types of fast. And I asked Nate, because Nate has been putting together, I have these here, we can't print them. Is that what we're going to call it? The 21-day
Guide to prayer and fasting.
Guide to prayer and fasting. That's great. I like that. Yeah. And Nate has developed and put all this stuff, compiled all this, and it's pretty amazing. So I just asked him today, we're kind of super last minute, whatever, but if we could just go through this, and then we want to record it, and then we can point people to it if we don't get a chance to do this again, either on Tuesday night or Saturday night.
Right. And another thing too is this is a good thing, for the 21 days, but just also practical information for fasting in general that we can apply. And because there is there's just a lot of confusion, and a lot of people bring their own ideas into it. And I just thought it was important we laid out biblically what's going on, and also practically, because you can make mistakes, and and so you can just take notes as we're going along. I don't have a note sheet or anything tonight, but you will eventually get all this information in a little booklet. So
I think it makes it a lot more what's the word for when you can grab hold of something
tangible,
easier, not
accessible.
Exactly.
Because this should be as normal in Christianity as praying together or
Absolutely.
as going to church, and so I think the accessibility factor is awesome.
Absolutely. So I guess just starting off with the first question is, what is fasting? Okay. And, sort of the base level is fasting is most simply described as abstaining from eating or drinking for a period of time. Biblically, whenever fasting is mentioned, it's always regarding food and drink. And so there's basically a medical element to it, but obviously fasting is so much more than that. Medically you could just fast, but there's, Christian biblical fasting, there's so much more going on than just from eating or drinking. Because I think that's an important aspect too, is we don't want people to just focus. The focus should not be on the food. It should not be on how far can I push myself? How can I, show the lack in myself? That's not the point of it. And so, like Lauren was saying, fasting should be a normal part of the Christian life. Jesus always said, when you fast, not if, implying that fasting occurred in the regular course of a disciple's life. So the question becomes, how can we partner with the Spirit more so we can walk in greater intimacy and power? Part of the answer is for us to live a fasted lifestyle. And obviously there's these moments of corporate gatherings, and where we're calling as a community, we're calling people into this and partnering with other ministries. But I think our hope ultimately is that people would want this to be their lifestyle, is they would live a fasted life. Not saying that you never eat again, but the way you live your life is marked by this in some way, to where it becomes a normal part of your life. And so, if we walk in the spirit of fasting in food and finances and use of our time, word, energy, we'll realize that the Lord will move in and through your life in ways that you couldn't have experienced otherwise.
Can you say those categories again? Food, something?
So if we walk in the spirit of fasting in regards to food, finances, use of your time, words, energy, and energy, I believe the Lord will begin to move in and through your life in ways that you couldn't have experienced otherwise.
That may not be an exhaustive list.
Right, yeah.
Etc. is at the end.
Et cetera, yes.
Right, et cetera, absolutely. And I mean, I think, just with this in general, that's what I mean by fasted lifestyle, that you're always in submission with every area of your life, that you're willing, as the Lord would move you, to fast. I like, especially that one with words. I actually just saw, there's like on that Bible app. I don't know if you guys have the one, what's it called? YouVersion Bible app. It's a really great one, and they've always got plans you can do, like reading plans. And one on there I just saw the other day was like a 10-day word fast, and it was like fasting from negative words and phrases for 10 days. And I was like, oh man, like that just like hit me. And I'm like, but anyway, like what I'm saying is this becomes your lifestyle. That's the goal. And that's what Jesus taught. Yeah.
So I want to write down a book. I encourage you guys to read. We do have a copy. It is called The Way of the Heart by Henry Nouwen. I think it's HENRINOUWEN.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Henri Nouwen. There's chapters. I mean, it's a chapter, or it's a book about embracing, to be honest, the fasted lifestyle, walking out specific things. But one of the key chapters is on silence and embracing solitude and silence. Now, solitude is not just disconnecting from people for the sake of your introvertedness, right? It's doing that with the purpose of engaging with the Lord. He quotes, I believe Thomas Merton was one of the early church fathers, an early writer, wrote on the Desert Fathers. And Merton, so I think he quotes, Nouwen quotes Merton, who's talking about the Desert Fathers, and he's saying that, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but that the Desert Fathers, the early fathers of the church who went literally into the desert and started the monastic movement, right? Their perspective was that society and embracing society and where society was going was equivalent to a shipwreck. Mm-hmm. And our job or our call is to do everything we can to get away from that sinking ship, swimming for shore. And so, because if we cling to or if we stay on board the direction where society is going, you sink. And so what the early church fathers did, the Desert Fathers did, was they literally embraced solitude and silence and went into the wilderness in the desert and sought the Lord. But I think there's the fasting of our words. You look at the monastic movements and they focus so many times again and again. You hear that, right? They're monks who take vows of silence. And there's something about our words. I had a dream a couple of years ago, and the Lord was just highlighting the idea of getting clarity on our words before we speak. And I remember also a series of dreams from a couple of guys, Stuart Greaves and Wes Hall shared a series of dreams each of them had in the same thing, where I think it was Stuart Greaves' dream was something akin to he had been on stage, so to speak, or he had a part prepared for him in a play, and he goes out on the stage and he didn't know the words. And the Lord said, it's too late. You didn't spend the time learning them before. And the emphasis of what had happened in the dream was he was busy speaking and engaging and talking to other people just about other stuff. And he didn't spend time gaining clarity on the message that he was supposed to speak when he was put on stage. Wow. And so it was this idea of there's something to living a fasted lifestyle in our words where we just don't engage with language of the culture and the words of the culture so that we can gain the language of the kingdom, so that when God actually thrusts us forth violently into the harvest field, we have clarity on the gospel. We have clarity on the words we speak. And we can do that in the context of a fast. fasting from negative words or fasting from words.
Yeah.
Or fasting and only speaking. I'd love to do this. I could not do this with my wife or with my child. So take this with a grain of salt and seek the Lord on this. But okay, I'm only going to speak in Bible sentences, you know what I mean, in verses for a week and see what happens. You know,
Dude, imagine knowing the word well enough that you could do
Right.
You can respond in season, with the right phrase. You know, we do that somewhat jokingly now. Even we teasing each other, and somebody throws out a Song of Solomon reference, like whatever. But if we could speak in such a way that we had understanding, we could do that.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, kind of the next thing, and I'll hit on this just for a second, and then we'll get into this a little more later. But if you have your Bibles, in Matthew 6, this is one of the key places that Jesus talks about fasting. But the point I want to emphasize right now is that Jesus was very clear that the Father rewards fasting. In verse 18, which I see on this, I'm glad this is a rough draft because I saw I had 17. So it is 18. I didn't change that. Jesus says, but only to your, he says, put oil on your head and wash your face so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. I don't know, like there's just sort of like, I feel like because of certain teachers and teachings within the church, I feel like there was such a negative reaction to rewards of any type. Mm-hmm. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. There was an overcorrection. But biblically speaking, the Father rewards people, and he rewards them and he blesses them. I mean, I was just talking to a guy named Caleb. He's like, it's very clear that when the nation of Israel was following God and was living his commands, he blessed them. And when they didn't, he did not bless them. So, I mean, I just think it's important that we know that God does reward people, and especially when it comes to fasting, you receive a reward if you do this with the right heart.
Well, there's a difference between earning salvation and earning rewards.
Absolutely.
And just totally as if the Old Testament wasn't enough for us, and it is, God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But Jesus, in Revelation, John, it is revealed to John, 27 rewards alone in the first 4 books of Revelation. Yeah. So 27 eternal rewards that Jesus offers in response to the way we live our life. Yeah. Yeah. And so they're earned.
Yep.
And so, I say, ultimately what it comes back to is every goodness that is done in us ultimately has its root in God. So the rewards aren't technically even earned by us. They are earned by the Spirit living through us. And so some of those rewards are external. We see our circumstances touched by God's power. And some of the rewards that we see are internal. Our hearts encounter God. This is a big one I see that because I do this, I am humbled. I'm tenderized to the Lord. I feel like sometimes the way people talk about fasting is like, if I do this, I'm going to manipulate God into doing what I want to do. And he's like, no. Like there's this, there really is this teaching, like fasting would be us like taking a lasso up to God and trying to bring him down to us. But that's not at all. I feel like it's the exact opposite. The Lord's bringing us up to him. And so really a lot of the change that takes place is in us. And so throughout history, men and women have fasted with the wrong spirit as they have sought to earn God's favor or man's approval. Some have fasted to try to prove to God how dedicated they are to him. Again, that's focusing on the wrong thing. This is not what God desires of us. He delights in our pursuit to love him and believe in his word. We do not fast to prove anything to God or to deserve his favor. We fast to position, like Andrew's talked about, to position ourselves to receive freely from his grace and be preoccupied with Jesus and his will. And so, I probably won't go into that. But Isaiah 58, I just want to say, read that. Read that on your own time. It specifically starts out with, fasting that I've ordained. God's ordains fasting like this. That's in Isaiah 58, and he goes through like what that fasting looks like. We don't want to do it with a religious spirit or so if you're like, I really want to get the heart for it, Isaiah 58 is a great passage to look at.
And I just want to highlight, so I'll just read them.
Yeah.
Loose the bonds of wickedness, undo heavy burdens, help the oppressed go free, give bread to the hungry, fasting to receive the light of revelation in God's word, emotional and physical health, and that righteousness would break forth. And I do want to highlight the first one that I said in verse 6 is to loose the bonds of wickedness. This is something that the Lord has stirred in my heart recently that I'm really like, wait, this is so good. It is, God has ordained fasting for the purpose of freeing you from besetting sins. So let's take the example of let's use a man who is dealing with a pornography addiction. How do you break that? If you've tried over and over and over again to change your lifestyle, change whatever, you set your apps up differently, your phones, whatever, yet you're still caught in that besetting sin, though you're trying to do the right thing. The Lord says, seek my face, surely. But Isaiah says right here, it's to loose the bonds of wickedness. That is someone who's in bondage, and God has actually ordained fasting, and more than just a simple fast or a one-time fast, though that can do it. It's a fasted lifestyle in order to break those bonds and actually free you from besetting sin. Now, it isn't the fast that does it. It's the Lord and his grace through the fast that actually breaks that bondage. And so I was speaking to a young man literally about this the other day, and the Lord was just like stirring my heart, like, this is so good. Oh, what do I deal with? Persistent anger. God, I'm fasting so you can break this off of me, and living a lifestyle so the Lord can break those things off of you. And I remember when we first moved to Kansas City and we first engaged entered into a fasted lifestyle, and the season of freedom that we had for like 3 or 4 years. Like for me, even personally, from old besetting sins in my life. And then as we left, they all came up again because I stopped fasting. And they all came to the surface, and they got really hard to deal with, and all of these things that I hadn't even thought of start coming back when we left, because the joke is the first thing that happens when you leave IHOP is you stop fasting. And I was like, oh, no, that's not true. And literally that's exactly what happened. We moved and you just get busy.
Well, and there's two dynamics to that, because there's fasting and the practice of regularly fasting in different ways. And then the other aspect of a fasted lifestyle is choosing to abstain or withhold from things that aren't even necessarily bad, even good things, such as, there were things we just didn't ever do or participate in, or even places we eat. There was so much that just as a community we chose not to do, and in coming back, especially to hometown, you get into just stuff that's normal and not bad, but we were getting so much more out of not doing it, or not entertaining ourselves and all that.
Right. That's good. And so, with that, so Isaiah 58, I highly recommend reading that on your own time. But then also, biblically, there's a lot of other reasons why we fast. To experience the power of God in greater measure. We see that in Matthew 17:21. To receive prophetic revelation of the end times. This is something Andrew has been bringing up. Daniel fasted, and he got the book of Daniel, which is the key to end times interpretation. So you see that in Daniel 9:1-3 especially. For the fulfillment of God's promises to our city or nation, Nehemiah, great example of that. To stop a crisis.
Can you slow down and start over, actually?
Okay.
So Daniel is receive end time revelation.
End time revelation.
Yes.
Nehemiah is something about for your city.
Fulfillment of God's promises to our city or nation.
Okay. Now don't say anything from it.
That's Nehemiah 1.
Yep. Because that was
And
Nehemiah.
these are other reasons.
Yeah. Biblical reasons not outlined in Isaiah 58. Ready for the next one?
Say the first one again, 17:21.
To experience the power of God in greater measure. see that in Matthew 17:21. Some of these things go out with fasting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Next is to stop a crisis. And that can be an individual crisis or a national crisis. And typically, that is often communicated through prophetic word, that you would know that there's some sort of calamity coming. But also, we all know biblically of a crisis that is stirring up, right? The increase of wickedness leading up to the end times. But we see that in Joel, like we've been looking at. Andrew taught out of Joel. Jonah, he told the people to fast and repent, where God was going to, it wasn't going to be good for them. Mm-hmm. So, in fasting, like I said, the Lord rewards that, and it's a positioning of your heart to stop a crisis. For protection, we fast for protection. Ezra 8:21 through 23, and Esther 3:13, and Esther 4:7. We fast for direction.
Is this protection?
Protection was the last one, yeah.
And this one's direction.
This one's direction. We see that played out in Acts 13. And then finally and this is, I think, probably the most important one, to grow in intimacy with Jesus, Matthew 9. Because again, all these things are great, but we need to make sure we keep our focus on what really matters. We don't just want, I was personally really touched and marked by the teaching, the lesson we did at Ascending in 10 that was on the Lord receiving his justice, like we don't want to just do a bunch of things and do pray. Well, the Lord, he needs justice, which is he deserves night and day prayer, and it's not happening. And so, start there. Start in the place of growing in intimacy with Jesus. But biblically, you can fall within all those bounds and still be in a good place.
So before we jump to
the next
one, I want to make 2 notes. Which they may be somewhere else in here, so
Very fine.
In a practical manner, first one is that fasting is always voluntary. Even though Joel expressly, what's a harsh word, very adamantly exhorts and calls
like a prophet.
Presses and pushes, and that's what I'm going to do. Just so you guys understand my heart, I'm going to do that. That's our calling, is to push and to push buttons and to push people that are on the edge over the edge. But though he, with fervor, presses people and calls people into it, it's always a voluntary response. Yeah. So there is no mandate, even though I kind of use that language. There is no you have to do this from the house, from shop. We won't do that. We're not saying that. It's an invitation to the corporate dynamic. We have specific goals in mind. We have a specific time frame, but it's voluntary. It's not forced, and so there's also not a requirement for staff either in that context. So that's just the first note to look at. Now, same thing with children. I'm pushing my child to do more. I'm going to call her to do more because we're basing a lot of this out of Joel, and Joel pushes it again, even upon the children, to say, reach for this and go after this and do this with your children. And we're trying to train her and teach her, right? So, but I'm not going to, Lily's fast will be from sweets, or juice, and let's just drink water and not drink milk, or well, maybe we'll drink milk, but and not drink sweet drinks and all of that stuff, right? It is still a sacrifice. It's really not. It's just healthy living, but that's what we're calling it. For her, it's a huge sacrifice. So I discourage minors from engaging in water-only fasts, or maybe juice fasts if you're doing that as a family and it's for your health too. We've done that. Lily's never done it.
No, Lily isn't. I think I did my first one in high school, And it was like an overnight thing. Like as a class, we decided to do it.
What was that called?
It's a
40-hour famine.
30-hour famine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put that in front of us to think about. Yep. And then the other point, and again, it might be in there, is that we tend to think that our modern speed and lifestyle and like, oh man, we're so much busier than they were back then, and that, all of this stuff, that it prevents us and makes fasting impractical, and it's not true. It is just a biblical concept. It's God's heart. He has his heart and his hand on fasting, and my point of this is there's grace for fasting if you ask for grace for fasting.
Yes. Yes.
And I was having a conversation with a young man today while 4 or 5 of us are sitting around feasting. I go to Cincinnati House of Prayer on Thursdays and I do a set, and then a wonderful, amazing woman who loves Jesus brings in food every week. And so we get to feast on Thursdays and share and talk and whatever. And we had a new young guy come in today who was fasting. And so as he's watching all of us devour this amazing food and he's fasting, we got to talking about the idea of, look, there is absolutely something to just regularly fasting and you choosing to do it on your own, right? But it's often harder. I'm not saying don't do it. We should do that, right? We should absolutely be doing that. Jesus, again, is calling us to fast. The Forerunner lifestyle and the calling that we put forth is saying, hey, let's reach for fasting 1 or 2 days a week. And some of that seems tedious and monotonous and whatever, but there's something to that. There's power and there's things in that. We can fast for reasons. But there's something too when the Lord puts his hand on it and thrusts it forth, where there's a tangible grace to just not eat, where it's really actually easy, where he's sitting there looking at all this. And he said, I was fasting a couple weeks ago and it was like so hard to do, but it was just my choice. And now the Lord has called me into a season of fasting and I really feel that burden. And he's sitting there unfazed by the amazing goodness of the food in front of us because there was a tangible grace from the Lord.
That's good.
Now, so you can ask for that and the Lord will give that. And that's one of the things that I just want to say. Though this seems hard, the idea of fasting is much harder than actually fasting.
That's true.
It really is harder to get past the idea of it than it is to just do it. In fact, it's really easy to fast because it's not doing stuff. You're doing, it's not eating. I don't have to take the time. Anyway, it's being facetious.
Honestly, the days that we fast, I'm like, oh my gosh, like 3 hours feels like it was freed up because I'm not making breakfast and cleaning up and packing the lunch and then putting it away and then making dinner and putting it away and cleaning it up and eating it and then doing the dishes. It's like, oh my gosh, look at all this time I have now.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to go into why are we specifically doing this fast? This has been sort of prayed into, our understanding has come through that. So we feel the purpose of this fast will obviously have corporate elements, and I think things are going to be probably unveiled for us even as we're doing it. And I think that'll especially happen personally. You can have your own personal reasons for doing the fast. But as a house, as Dayton Shop, why are we doing this? And really it comes down to one very simple thing. It's the presence of God. We are fasting to invite in greater measure the presence of God. And I think Jack explained it this last week. He was like, and I thought this was such a good analogy. He said, the Lord is always present with us, so why would we fast for his presence, right? He's always around. What does that mean? And he said, the Lord gave him this, so I'm stealing this from Jack. I don't know if he's copyrighted it. But he said that basically the Lord told him, are you always present and there with your kids? Yeah. Well, if Caleb comes up to you and says, hey, Dad, do you want to play basketball? So he's coming to his dad and requesting that extra time. And of course, you're going to do that, right? You want, especially if your teenage boy is coming up to you and asking to spend time with you, you drop everything. You're going to do that. And it's that similar heart. Yes, the Lord's always present with us, but we can ask for that greater measure, that more specific time with him. And I think that's a good way to look at it. And so, we're asking for more of his presence. We're asking for it in a greater measure. We're wanting to spend more time with our dad, is kind of what that comes back to. And so with that in mind, the sort of key theme we've felt is that with that in mind, we're supposed to focus on Psalm 84, which I think in the last two abides, it has been hit on at least once to some degree. And so we want to spend time understanding what it means when the psalmist says, my soul yearns and even faints for the courts of the Lord. Like, how do we have that level of longing for God? How many of us truly believe when it comes down to it, that better is one day in his courts than 1,000 elsewhere? We may believe that at certain points in our day, but are we living that kind of life that we believe that? And so we really want to focus on these Psalm 84 dynamics of his presence and seeking for God to give us a greater revelation of what Psalm 84 could look like in our lives. So do you want to say anything else about that?
I think that's really good. So when Jack brought it up, I just remember him saying, I feel like it's Psalm 84 is the focus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think so too. Now, the Lord was showing me in context of that, some of that looks like for us as a community getting a little bit of a taste and see of what it's like to have a community that's gathering on a daily basis to pray. Because we're asking the Lord for 3 2-hour sets a day, all the time, right? Not for the 21-day fast. I'm saying that's what we're asking the Lord for is, hey, Lord, release psalmists and release forerunners and singers and musicians and songbirds to come into the house of prayer and to sing songs and to pray 3 times a day, morning, evening, and night. And as a foretaste of 24/7, I'm asking the Lord for 24/7. I fully believe, even especially after a Tuesday meeting that we had with the one guy, I won't say his name, that the Lord's going to do it in our city. Whether it's in this building or not is totally irrelevant.
Right.
The Lord's going to establish night and day prayer as the center point and the focal point of what he's doing in the region, and everything will be rooted out of that. Yeah. Just like Jack and Jen have shared, one of the prophetic visions or dreams over the house and that the Lord has showed is there's a hub, like a wheel, and then there's 3 spokes off of that wheel, right? And but the center hub of that wheel is the prayer room. It's the place of prayer and worship. And so I think in that context, the Lord's going to do it. But this season is a foretaste and actually a little bit of a taste and see that the Lord is good. I believe people are going to feel it, taste it, see it, and be like, this is, whoa, yeah. This is what we've been missing. Why are we not doing this all the time? Right. And so I'm hoping in the context of Psalm 84, that's what I'm praying for the house. Now, that's the shop element. In a more corporate sense, and by corporate, I'm thinking body of Christ and the region. Some of the things already now I'm not setting any of these things in stone, but some of the things already that the Lord has been highlighting about why we're fasting and even why we're calling to IFI and to H2O, and we met with Declare Dayton and other ministries saying, hey, would you embrace this and run this with us, is for breakthrough in our city. We're actually fasting and asking the Lord to bring and experience the power of God in a greater measure, to open the heavens, bring revelation and understanding, right? To release light and revelation of his word and who he is, but just even to open the heavens and give direction, give insight, give clarity. We want to see a great move of God in our city. We want to see the open heavens, and every time I look at those lights that have the clouds, I'm like, that's what they are. Those are a foreshadowing of it. You can't see them on the screen, but there's these lights up here that have clouds and stuff in them. But we want the open heaven. We want that reality tangibly, literally manifest over downtown Dayton and over the region. And we want the power of God to just wash across the city like a wave. And so we're fasting and asking the Lord for however he wants to do it, to release that season of breakthrough and a great move of God in our city.
Yeah.
And so that is the extension beyond shop, right? That's what we're asking for corporately, regionally, and then personal things. Those are things that you're going to take before the Lord. Because we're doing this is a big deal, right? I mean, we're doing this corporately for corporate things. Keep those before you as you fast, as you pray, as you come to the prayer meetings. But it's okay to say, we're doing this for multiple reasons. Lord, what is it that you want me to engage with? And I mean, we're seeking the Lord in the midst of it. Lauren and I, we're just asking for breakthrough in our family. We want revival in our family and then revival in the nation, And so we're seeking it with that heart in mind.
Right. And so with that in mind, that's kind of what this little next section is about, is before we go into the season, I want to highly encourage you all to spend time praying what this looks like for you personally. And so that's where we get into this next section, which is sort of like, what does preparation look like? If you're like, I don't know how to prepare for this. So the first thing we want to do is we want to prepare our hearts. We want to be willing to hear what God says needs to change, or be willing to change. What is he saying to you? Tell God that you surrender your life to him and that you want more of him and his ways. And actually, there's going to be a pretty cool little tool for you to use once we have these books available. It'll be a consecration worksheet is what we're calling it. Basically, what I would sort of hope is that before the fast happens, or maybe even day one of the fast, definitely you want to do it early on. But I would encourage you to do it before you do the fast. Mm-hmm. Is that you set aside time to go through this consecration worksheet. And what it's going to do is walk you through setting aside, consecrating this season, this next season, these 21 days to the Lord. And through this exercise, it'll really help you prepare your heart for what this is maybe going to practically look like as you seek him. And we're going to, we'll kind of, I guess, explore that a little more at a later point. But yeah, once these booklets come out, highly recommend you prepare your heart by doing that worksheet. It's a really valuable tool. Preparing your body, even just practically, if you're going to do, let's say, a fruit and veggies only, like you're going to do like what we would call a Daniel fast, or if you're going to only drink water, you need to prepare your body ahead of time. So I would highly recommend against, if you're going to do one of those types of fasts, do not have a king's feast the day before the fast starts, because regardless, your body will be detoxing from all the crap you've put into it. So ease yourself into it. Maybe start eating a little less meat getting up to it. If that's what you're, whatever your fast looks like.
Wean yourself off.
Exactly, weaning yourself off of those things. Because regardless, you're probably going to detox to some degree, and you will feel sick. And it's going to be a little bit of terrible right there happening. And you're going to think, this is the worst, I have to quit, I'm not doing this anymore. But just want to encourage you, like we're saying, to push through that initial discomfort. And I'm telling you, once you get into it a little more, you'll realize, it's not terrible. Like the feeling of being hungry will start to dissipate. Hungry will start to dissipate. The fatigue,
the nausea,
even the cravings. Like I've noticed that since we started fasting as a family and stuff. Actually, even
a couple 24 hours.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, like from a forerunner calling sort of thing. But we've noticed. I crave like carrots now. Like I never did that before, but like when you're living this way, you'll start to notice like your cravings changing, and that's good. And so just in a practical sense, be prepared in your body, and then also with your body, and in that your mind,
brain fog
and all that stuff will take place. And so I think that's why it's important, and why I want to encourage, and it's going to be hard, but like don't just divulge yourself in social media and TV during the fast, because I'll say I've been guilty of this, that like just to sort of, where I think I'm in this pain of hunger in the midst of a fast, I was like, you sort of use social media or TV as like a little shot of, like I need this to get through, to cope with it.
Distract me from the hunger.
Right. And so, I know from experience it's hard, but just like, let's try to, as we're going on this 21 days fast, especially, let's try to instead go to the Lord. Don't use the distractions. Don't use, that's another thing. Prepare your schedule ahead of time. What's your day going to look like differently during these 21 days? Because it should look different. It shouldn't look the exact same. Or we're not doing what we're trying to do.
And maybe fast from Facebook.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say, I would encourage everyone, again, this is voluntary, but in addition to fasting from food or something, fast from social media and those things as well.
I was just going to, in some sense, I think those are kind of a given.
Right.
To me, because if I'm fasting food, the dynamics of entertainment, when you look biblically, did they have to fast from those things? Well, no, but they weren't inundated with them.
Right.
They weren't beaten with words everywhere they went and imagery everywhere. Think about that when you walk down the street and you see 1,000 words, literal words written out between here and somewhere.
Yeah.
Or image after image after image after image. They didn't have that. It was just
The desert.
yellow.
Right.
I don't know, whatever. It was sand and dirt or a little bit of green. Because whatever. And so just trying to remove that. Again, I push back to the way of the heart and that concept of separating away from things.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a little bit in the booklet, and maybe I'll just jump into it a little bit while we're on it. But the concept of consecration. To consecrate means to unite by force with the sacred. That's the actual definition of what consecration means. It is expressing it, to express intensive force, and sacred is to dedicate. And so it's uniting by force with the sacred. And the way that you consecrate is a twofold expression. There is separation from things and separating yourself unto other things.
Right.
And so we're fasting from food, but what are we fasting unto, or what are we separating ourselves to do?
Yeah.
And so some of that is to read the word more, to pray more, to be in the prayer room, but some of that is also to not watch TV, to not be in those, because to do the things we're separating to, we also have to lay aside those things. And so, and the point of all of it is, the ultimate goal is union and uniting our hearts with the Lord.
Yeah.
Because as we remove ourselves and the influence of the world and separate ourselves, we're uniting with what is sacred and holy.
Right.
The point is union with God's heart and agreement.
Yeah. And we'll actually, once you get the booklet, the consecration guide will take you through that process of what am I separating, from, and what am I separating onto. So, we'll go through that. So now we're going to go to a little practical section here, types of fast. Yeah, Lauren.
Just a comment too. I think something to remind ourselves, and also even just to verbalize to each other as a community as we're doing this, that part of the purpose of fasting is to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is to be inconvenient. The purpose
is to
push you. It's to get rid of all the things that we lean on, get rid of all the things that honestly make life easier.
Right.
And that's why, as I've gotten longer and longer into this lifestyle, I'm getting to the point where food almost, in any fast, food always has to be some element of it, even if it's just the pleasurable foods. Right. Because no matter what, there is still that God of the stomach and of pleasure. Mm-hmm. And again, it doesn't mean God says it's bad. He loves feasting. Mm-hmm. But we're so afraid, and particularly in the Western church, of making people uncomfortable or pushing them too hard or making things convenient for them. And the whole, like, so much of the purpose is, you know what, I am going to push myself harder unto more with the Lord.
Yeah.
And so the brain fog even and the detox and all that, like, we can remind each other, no, this is normal. You'll make it. Just get to bed tonight, drink a bunch of water. You'll make it through. It does lift, like, you know, even in that stuff.
Yeah.
God is worth it.
Yeah.
The thoughts I have, there's a book that I got when I was confirmed in the 8th grade, and I still remember it. Extreme God Chasers by Tommy Tenney. But the two key theses of his book was, one, the level of our emptiness determines the level of our filling.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're always filled with the things of the world, we can never be fully filled with the Lord.
Come on.
And so, what's that? I know, right? So that's like, I picture fasting as like the Lord carving out space in my spirit, in my life, so that He can fill me to a greater measure. If I'm only leaving Him the top like quarter cup of my spirit, then that's all I'm ever going to have of Him.
That's good.
And then the second thing is that it did a lot of parallels with the Old Testament sacrificial system, and that the Lord always draws near to burning flesh. And so as we like set our flesh and our dependence on the world on fire, we make a fragrance that's pleasing for Him to draw near to us. And
say that again.
The Lord always comes drawn to burning flesh or something like that. It's kind of morbid, but that's good.
But it's
That's
true.
Good
I mean, that's
stuff. What's his name? Tommy.
Tommy Tenney. Tenney.
I think I know that book.
Jack and Jenny got it for me when I was confirmed in 8th grade. And now we're on staff for it.
That's
awesome. Yeah, those are all great.
The rewards of fasting is another good one. It's
We're gonna get into that.
Stuff out.
We're going to get into that. All right. So practically here, types of fast. So I kind of in the booklet, and I lay out sort of the practicals, and just to sort of like, if you have no basis of what fasting is, here's some kind of ideas to search.
Because what happens when you say fast is people freak out.
Yeah.
Because they're like, wait, you're not going to drink or eat anything for 20, you'll die.
That's dangerous.
Or if you don't eat for a day, you're going to die. That's what we think. But
Right.
So
number one is the complete fast. This would be drinking only water, or maybe even only liquids, mostly water and light juices. Broths or light soups may be included in this as well. If you're doing this, and if you've never fasted before, anyone listening to this is a rough one. If you're new to fasting and you feel like, oh, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to do a complete fast, be prayerful about it, because that's not one for newbies to do.
Be careful, and even in it, yes, do it in hiddenness and secret, right? And you'll be rewarded openly. But if it's new to you, if you've never fasted and you're saying, I'm going to just do water, if we're doing 21-day fast, I am telling everyone right now, drink water. Yeah. Don't do a complete fast with no food and no water.
No, I didn't even put that as an option.
It's not an option on our context. Now, there are complete fasts where you fast from food and water. That's what Esther did, they called from food and water. But it was 3 days. That is the maximum you should ever do a complete fast. And I even in that say,
that was a pretty specific word from the Lord.
Yes. So that is at least always drink water. But if you're engaging in a fast for the first time and you're saying, I'm going to just do water, just go into it prayerfully, be very careful, and maybe have a buddy that is watching you and knows, so that you don't get sick and fall apart in your hiddenness. Makes sense? So,
well, in this point too, just before I go into the rest of them, can you kind of talk a little further about the whole, like, if I screw up, if I
can I tell the peanut butter story?
Yeah, that's the
Martin knows this.
That's what I was kind of leading you towards.
So, on the concept, okay, so we're doing an extended fast. The reality is, particularly if you're new, but even those that aren't new to this, you'll probably break it and cheat. You might fail. And that the reality is that's okay. Push delete, start again. My favorite story is one of our old leaders. Her name is Megan. She's amazing. We just adore her. She's awesome. She's doing this fast. There's a corporate fast at the church that the community called, and oh yeah, like going wholehearted for the Lord. And she's like, I'm just doing water and it'll be great. You know, and a weekend, things start getting a little hard. And she comes home and she's a big peanut butter lover. Like loves peanut butter. It's her thing. I hate peanut. I can only eat peanut butter on a spoon. That's it. I don't like peanut butter. Anyway, she comes home and
the most extreme way to.
Yeah,
I know.
I don't like peanut butter. I only eat it out of a jar.
I don't like it on anything.
I don't like butter.
In anything,
Okay.
or anything peanut butter flavored, but give me it in the jar on a spoon and I'm happy. It's weird. I don't know. Like a dog.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Seriously.
so she comes home one day, like halfway into the fast, halfway through, and her roommate had made a peanut butter something sandwich, but she smells peanut butter. Like, oh man, like I need to start getting twitchy or whatever. And she tried to resist for a couple of hours, but then eventually she just broke down and goes to the cabinet, rips it open, opens the jar, and just devours like the whole jar of peanut butter.
Holy crap.
In the middle, and then she's feeling, oh, well, obviously terrible because
So
she's
she's
eating a bunch of peanut butter after
fasting.
fasting for 12 days or however long. But that terrible sense of, God, I failed this fast. I failed in doing this, and she's all tearing herself up about it. Well, she ends up going to small group that night, and somebody gives her a word, and they're praying, and just says, I don't know why, I just feel like the Lord said peanut butter. And she goes, oh, and the whisper of the Lord came, and he just said, I love you and your peanut butter breath. And so it was just the tender mercy of the Lord to say, it's okay if you mess up. Just, if you might get a day into the fast and eat a whole pizza because you're so hungry you're going to die. You know, that's okay. Push, delete, start over. It doesn't mean you have to start there and do 21 days. All right, you're on day 19 and you eat. Okay, push, delete, and then the next couple of days just fast again, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't think that you have to do it perfectly and really well, and that there's some like great achievement if you do it. Like it's the heart matter. It's the heart response of the Lord's action.
Exactly. We're not trying to prove anything. Like I mentioned earlier.
Now, that doesn't mean just
Right.
eat every day
Yeah.
and say you're fasting.
Yeah.
If you know what,
Don't indulge your sin.
right, and don't lie to yourself and the Holy Spirit in a nice sense of fire.
Right.
Especially because this is an opportunity to do it together,
Exactly.
which can like help,
Right,
you know.
right,
and-
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Go ahead.
So then next, the selective fast, which is removing certain items from your diet. This is typically removing something that would be a challenge, if you were to remove it from your diet. So kind of like an idea here is like abstaining from meat, sweets, and bread. The Daniel fast, he said he abstained from choice foods, bread, meat, and sweets. At least that's what we.
I mean, you could go vegan.
Yeah.
And or live on a paleo diet, or
Right.
it's not a diet, but call it a fast and
Right.
do it as a fast. Don't do it, you know what I mean? You're not doing this to lose weight.
Right.
We should not be doing this for that reason, though fasting is healthy for you,
Yes.
right? I fully believe that. But if you're looking for it's really hard to be vegetarian when you love meat.
Right.
It's really hard to live a vegan lifestyle when you love meat or whatever. Okay, so give those things up and try that. Just as examples.
Yep. And then partial fast, this is what I would call like abstaining from eating at certain times. So one example of that is what they would call like the Jewish fast, which is that you would fast from sun up to sundown. So you're only eating when it's dark outside. The Benedictine fast, which is that you only eat one meal per day.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Partial fast is sun up to sun.
A partial fast would be abstain from eating at certain times. And
So the examples of partial fast would be the
example would
Jewish
be
fast.
like the Jewish fast is only fast from sun up to sundown, which
So
I
you
think
eat
like
when it's
Muslims do that during
So
Ramadan.
Ramadan, I have a cousin who is Muslim, and he fasts through Ramadan, and they understand it produces something.
Yep.
It truly does, and we have to gain the same reality that Islam has understood about the power of sacrifice and fasting.
Yep.
And they do it, and they do it very wholeheartedly when they're doing it. He looks like he's going to die. And they fast throughout the day, no water, nothing. From sunup to sundown, they do nothing. And then they're allowed to drink at night and eat. So he eats like vegetables or something like that.
Right.
And of course, every year it's during poultry days, and so he doesn't get to eat poultry days.
Town festival.
Then the Benedictine fast, which the Benedictine monks would be 1 meal per day, is what they would do.
Fast 1 meal per day?
No, they
only eat 1 meal per day. Yeah. And then the diminishing fast, which in the context of 21 days would be during week 1, you would eat veggies and fruit. Then, there's kind of different ways to do this, but I'm just kind of laying out examples. Week 2, you would remove the veggies and fruit, and you would only eat broths and juices. Then week 3, you would do a water-only fast for those 7 days. So in that way, it's like becoming more and more difficult as it goes on, which is tough.
And for those that are new to fasting but want to try the water, I would encourage to do a diminishing fast of some shape. You can do this, what Nate just said. Another option is week 1, you eat 2 meals a day. Week 2, you eat 1 meal a day. And week 3, you're only drinking water, right? It's still the fast. The heart's still in the right place, but it's easing your body into a new concept for your body, it's just a healthy way to do it. So I'd encourage people that are new to it. And you know what? You might not figure out until 3 days in that this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
You might say, I'm doing water, and then you start eating and you can't stop. Okay, just do 2 meals a day for a week, and then do 1 meal a day and ease your way back into it. So if that makes sense.
And there's grace because it's an invitation. Like you said, the heart response, if you're giving yourself to it, then I know my dad did the diminishing for his beginning of the year 21 day, but 2 days into the week of just water, he's like, this isn't working. So he did water and V8 tomato juice, which was not enjoyable, but it gave him the little bit he needed.
And one other on the selective type of fast that I talk about every time, and I love it. It just, Mike Bickle, who's in his 60s, he's our dad's age, 65, whatever, he basically has said, I've heard him say, I'm too old for me to do a water fast anymore. For extended periods, it's just not healthy for his body, things like that. And so what he does is he does a selective fast where he does not eat pleasurable food. And so he eats his two least favorite foods on the planet for every meal: lima beans and green apples. And a little bit of coffee, always. Water, a little bit of coffee, right? But I love those concepts because it's about pleasure, which is really what we're after.
Yeah. And so again, I just want to encourage you, whatever you choose, be prayerful about it. We want to be prayerful about our choice. Don't just do what, your friend's doing or what, a leader's doing. Ask the Lord what he wants you to do. By nature, a fast is going to be difficult. As you go through your fast, there will be times of hunger. But if you push through it, you'll realize, and again, we don't want to be preoccupied with the food. We want to try to become more focused on Jesus. It's not about the food. Yes, it's an element, but the focus of the fast is not your food and how little you're eating. The focus is on Jesus. So I would say too, that's another thing when you're choosing, especially sometimes with certain, things don't pick something that's going to make you prep meals more, because then you end up being more focused on the food because you never had to cook a vegan. Right.
Honestly, I feel like when we've done the Daniel fast, I feel like it does become all about the food.
Right.
It does not work for me.
You'd rather fast entirely.
I would rather eat nothing than have to make that crap.
Right. And it takes the focus off what it's supposed to be. And so, in the midst of the fast, we want to spend ample time with the Lord, closer to the Lord through prayer, his word, and worship. And then, just kind of my idea, and I go through this in the book, I'm not going to talk about this, but in the idea of planning your day out and remembering that use your meal times as markers to pray and to worship and read the word. Don't use them as don't focus on the food. Like, use those times to like focus on the Lord. And then I give you practical examples in the book. But again, I'm not going to go through this of what it would look like to do a fruit, vegetable, juices, what it would look like to do liquids only, what it would look like to do the Daniel fast. No, not going to go into that.
You can Google it, I'm sure.
Right.
Or get it.
Right. A few other notes. Jesus and Moses spent time in the desert alone with God, and they would hear God speak in powerful ways. So I just think it's important that we create space for silence in the midst of this. So that means, like I said, like we were talking about, the TV, the social media, turn off the radio when you're in the car. Just sort of like create that space for silence in the midst of the fast. We don't want to complain or brag about our fast, especially on social media. Now, one thing I'll add to this is I think, if you're really struggling in the midst of a fast and you just want, a brother or a trusted brother or sister in Christ, hey, can you just pray for strength for me? Because I want to do this. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you go in private to someone and ask them for prayer to give you strength to get through this, if you feel like you need that. But, we don't want to turn it into like every person we come across, we're talking, I'm doing a fast, I'm doing a fast, I'm doing, and like, don't post it on social media, which.
Right. I mean, Jesus' rebuke to the Pharisees and to the religious leaders of the day was that they were fasting for the point of accolades.
Right.
They were doing it to be seen. Now, there's a general fear when people say, I can't say that I'm fasting because I'm going to lose my reward.
Right.
That's not really what he's talking about. If somebody asks you, are you eating? Do you want to eat? Well, why aren't you eating? You can say I'm fasting. It's not going to cancel out your reward. Because you're not telling them in order to gain prestige and honor and look important.
Right.
So just keep that in mind.
Right.
You don't have to lie or hide the truth.
Yes.
You can say, if somebody says, hey, you want to eat? No, just say no thanks. If they press you, answer. Now, there's a kind of a joking general rule, like in a community that fasts, don't ask, don't tell. Like if I say, hey, I bring food in, like today was at C-Hop, someone brought in food, okay. If you sit down and you don't pick up a plate, we don't ask. We just assume you're fasting. Does that make sense? Or to the super hospitable woman who we love dearly, if you sit down and she says, would you like to eat? And you say, oh, no, thank you, I'm okay. She does not press you. And say, well, are you sure? Because that's generally what those super hospitable people do. Oh, no, here, have some cake and cupcakes. I mean, like grandma and your aunt always did, right? And you go home and they feed you until you die. So that, we just don't do that. And you don't want to be in the context of a community, fasting community. That's just something we won't do.
Right.
We'll just, okay, if you say no, no means no.
Right.
I don't need to know why. I'm just going to assume you're fasting, and I'm not going to steal your reward by asking.
And so, and with that, kind of something that goes along with it is stay away from negative people. What I mean by this in the sense that there's a couple reasons to this, but like, I feel like there's certain people, if they found out you're fasting, and these people are, they would make your life worse. Like, they're like, you can't do that. It's just like, then you just get all discouraged and you're having to see them work every day and they keep bringing it up and you're like, okay, this is becoming.
Do you want a cookie?
Right. And so negative people kind of limit your interaction during your fast.
And believers
partially too,
do that too.
Yeah, partially because you're going to probably be a little more ticked off than normal and so be around a negative person. And then I said, maybe it's important to establish accountability partners for prayer and encouragement. Since we are doing this as a community, we know that have people, hey, pray through it together, and you're doing the fast in a corporate setting. Kind of through that journaling, maybe journal your prayer time with the Lord, and acknowledge that this is kind of a note I found. Acknowledge that your flesh cannot be trained; it must be crucified. So
That's good.
like that's what the Lord tells us to do: crucify your flesh.
I love Mark Anderson used to say, we have to, and I'm paraphrasing here, but we have to get a hold of the idea that Jesus said, come after me, take up your cross and follow me. He's like, that doesn't mean just invite him in. That doesn't mean equip yourself. It means kill yourself.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be put to death. And because you have a tendency to keep, with your words, resurrecting the old flesh, put yourself to death every day.
Yes.
Crucify yourself on a daily basis. It's a
Yes.
process and a pattern of doing it.
Yeah.
Just think about that. There is resurrection power in your tongue. And so when you start speaking things, that they can raise that old fleshly man back from the dead, put him to death.
I'm going to go into this part.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back to
Come back.
Yeah, I want to sort of trade back and forth on that.
Yes.
The last practical note I have is the breaking of your fast. And this is extremely important. So please listen. If you're going to fast, it is important you break it in the right way. If you break it wrong by, like, let's say eating too much or consuming a large amount of the wrong foods at the end of your fast, it can actually have dangerous consequences. This is where a lot of people go wrong. And so I have some suggestions, just sort of like how to end your fast. And so we're going to start with the physical, and then I have a spiritual and emotional way of ending your fast. Ending your fast physically. If you're doing an extended, especially water fast, if you're doing the complete fast, start really ease into it. Like maybe eating some fresh fruit, like watermelon, to sort of ease yourself back into eating. That might be a good way, because I'm telling you, if you're doing a water only fast and you go and have, a 16-ounce steak, like your body will not respond well.
And if you're doing water only for 21 days, I would encourage you
Start with liquids.
start with liquids.
Yes.
And watermelon's not bad.
Watermelon's like low-key water.
Totally. It's basically water. So yeah. But even before doing the solid fruits, I would do a couple of meals of broth and fruit juices. And you can do like the heftier fruit juices, not like apple juice in a jar. I'm thinking like go get a naked juice kind of thing.
The Jell-O, I'd be careful though, because it's not really food, because it's just processed stuff and sugar. Actually, I think it could really rip your insides. It would rip my insides out. Like, I don't know.
That's another thing to keep in mind if you're fasting. Like I say, I'm getting rid of sweets. Don't go eat a pan of brownies at the end of your sweet fast.
Nope. You and everyone else in the room will hate you.
Like say you're fasting carbs, because that's an enjoyable, pleasurable food. We all know it is. Don't go eat a bunch of carbs after 21 days of not eating carbs. And so I put it here like hey, this is sort of a practical way to do it. Day one, eat after drinking fruit and vegetable juices. Once you feel like you're ready to start introducing food, day one, add a raw salad to your diet. So you're still drinking vegetable juices and fruit, eating fruit. Add a raw salad to that. Then day two, maybe add a baked potato in. Then day three, add some steamed veggies. And then after that, it's pretty safe to start slowly reintroducing your normal diet. So, and like I said, if you eliminated certain elements from your diet, like sweets or meats, be careful about gradually bringing those back in as well. If you do it all at once, you can get extremely sick and get a shock to your digestive system. So again, everyone participating in the fast, be mindful of that. So that's the physical. And then also you can look this stuff up too. But the spiritual and emotional one, I think it's important spiritually and emotionally how we break our fast as well. Because I truly believe that during this time the Lord is going to move in greater measure in our life. He's going to speak more. He's going to show up more. And so, like Andrew was saying, when they left IHOP, like don't end this fast and then just like
never fast again.
Never fast again. Throw on Netflix and binge out for the weekend. We want to sort of take time to reflect on what the Lord did during this fast. I actually have some questions you can go through. What are some key lessons you learned? Maybe like in the midst of this, you'll learn new habits or disciplines that you want to keep. You're like, I really liked how I planned to wake up with the Lord every day at this time. Or, maybe one of them would be, I really liked going to the prayer room every day, and I just sensed something change. And you're like, I want to keep that after maybe even practically speaking, there might be some new dietary rules that you want to follow. You're like, I
feel really good.
I feel good. And also I realize spiritually, in a spiritual sense, I'm like, sweets have a wrong place in my life. And in the midst of giving them up, I realize I need to, maybe give them up or, whatever that may be. And then also, again, we're taking kind of an inventory of what happened emotionally and spiritually. What dreams or visions did the Lord give me? What, prophetic words? What, that's why I think it's important during this time, maybe to journal or write down, keep a Word document, whatever it works best for you, where you are taking the time to really reassess this stuff before you hop back in.
And just to highlight that, I think it's that looking at the disciplines that you're doing, the habits that you're forming, that the old adage that it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's not really true. We can say that. It takes choice to form a habit and a decision to form a habit. So back to what Nate's saying, when you get to the end of 21 days and you formed some habits by choice and you pursued them and walked them out, like reading the Word every day and getting up and spending time with the Lord, just say, we did it for 21 days. What's the next 21 look like? You know what I mean? Don't just give them up. Give yourself to those, into the lifestyle, those dynamics. The weak body aspect of the fast, yes, you can come off of that dynamic for a while, but see if you can, in the process, maintain the lifestyle choices of the Word and the Lord.
Yes.
Does that make sense? The heart choices through the process of and I think I would call it this: the coming in and the going out, right?
Yeah.
Like, can you carry your heart right when you're fasting and when you're not fasting? Is what we should all be asking as we come out of a fast. Okay, I did it. I did these things, these spiritual disciplines of prayer and seeking the Lord and being in the Word while I was fasting. Can I continue to do them while I'm not fasting? Mm-hmm. And if you can't, maybe you should fast again. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. But I just want to re-highlight that again. Just to don't just walk away from it when you're done, and as if nothing happened during that 21-day process.
And then kind of have two last things I want to do here. And one of them is, I want to look at the rewards of fasting. There is a book by Mike Bickle and Dana Candler called The Rewards of Fasting. I straight up ripped these out of that book. And Mike Bickle really doesn't seem to mind you copyright.
Nope.
So
copyright is the right to copy.
Yeah, but I did give him credit to, and so you can actually download this book for free on his website. If you go to mikebickle.org and you click on the books, it's a free ebook download for The Rewards of Fasting. There's a couple other ones on there too, like 7 Longings of the Human Heart.
Get it.
So there's some good stuff on there for free. He just lets you download it.
What's the website?
mikebickle.org.
And I'll write it down.
All of his teachings are on there too, and there's so many good ones. Transcripts, audio, video.
So basically, before we start going into these rewards, and Andrew and I sort of go back and forth on them, saying yes to a fasted lifestyle and positioning our hearts before the bridegroom God in fasting is a marvelous invitation from the Lord, and there are many rewards to be reaped from doing so. So we'll kind of slowly go through this so you guys can follow along. I'll start with reward number 1. Fasting, I sort of mentioned this earlier, fasting tenderizes and sensitizes our hearts to receive more of God. So fasting tenderizes and sensitizes our hearts to receive more of God. By nature, our hearts are prone to hardness and dullness towards God. When we fast, there is a freedom in our hearts that changes our inner man. to become ruled by a desire for more of God. And I just think this is so true. Every time I have given, even to moments of fasting, but even to, as coming to the house of prayer and lifestyle fasting, the longing to just want to be in his presence even more. Like if you're wanting to grow deeper in your relationship with the Lord, you're like, man, I want more of him. Having a fasted lifestyle is, I think, the gateway into that. Mm-hmm. So,
and on that, Nate said, heart's prone to hardness and dullness, right? We really are. We give ourselves over so easily to other things. And the thing the Lord showed me in regards to that is when you think of dullness, we think of boredom. Well, yes, but there's also something to dullness as the antithesis of sharp, right? Being sharp and focused and pointed towards things. And what dullness looks like to me, imagine heart and not Valentine's Day heart. I mean, the human heart. And a dull heart is a fat heart. It's covered in fat. Mm. It's no longer sharp. It's no longer keeping rhythm, right? When you start and you build up fat around a heart by feeding the body and the mind with garbage. Mm. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? Or we talk about into the heart. What goes into your eyes, the eye those realities go into the heart and fatten the heart, or harden the heart. You can put it that way too. And so the fasting tenderizes our heart. Now take that really fatty heart, that hard heart, and Misty, I love Misty talking about this. Take your cold heart and stick it before the flame of God's love, and it tenderizes that cold, frozen heart, or which is hard, cold and frozen. When you take meat and you stick it over a flame, what's the first thing that burns away? Fat. And so if you can take your figurative, right, and set it before the Lord in fasting, in the place of weakness, in the place of prayer and intimacy with him, in this concept, it will burn away. The Lord's presence will just burn away all of those fat things. But you have to stop feeding it fat. Yeah. You have to stop fattening your heart by looking at things, listening to things, those dynamics, as well as food.
You go ahead with the second one.
Fasting enlarges our capacity for a righteous and focused life. And that's just what the idea of carving out a space for the Lord. So God's desire for us is to love what we used to hate and hate what we used to love. We do not want to get stuck in spiritual passivity. It is our glory and inheritance to live cleanly and feel clean. So
can you say that? So what was the main point?
Fasting enlarges our capacity for a righteous and focused life. So again, filling up the fatty heart, you no longer have room or the capacity to receive from the Lord. And so the imagery that always pops into my head is, imagine you get stuck into a balloon that's deflated, right? And so when you start fasting, what you're doing is stretching out and carving out that balloon, right? And finding place for the Lord to come in and fill.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we don't like that. I think just that quote too, that I'm going to read it again. God's desire for us is that we come to love what we used to hate and hate what we used to love. And we do not want to get stuck in spiritual passivity. It is our glory and inheritance to live cleanly and feel clean. That is something that fasting does in us. You can't be living a fasted lifestyle and come before the presence of the Lord and just kind of shrug your shoulders. It really increases. And I think one way I always think of this is when, especially when we used to do abide later on Saturday nights. I remember once it started getting towards the end of the night, Jack would be like, just press in a little longer. Like, I know you're getting tired. And I just think in the midst of fasting, it enlarges your capacity to go further, to press further in. So I think you guys you'll see that as a reward as you fast.
For sure.
And even, to the ability with grace to lay aside lesser, inferior pleasures.
Yeah.
Right? Things that aren't necessarily wrong or bad inherently, but if the Lord's calling you to more, the lifestyle of fasting will make it so much easier to throw everything else aside. Because fasting is a tangible training ground for giving up things that you want and need.
Yeah.
To where when you come to a place of, I've got all of these material things, I'm going to sell them all and just do whatever the Lord says. That process is a whole, when you're living a lifestyle of fasting where you're constantly denying yourself and your own needs. And so that's that righteous life and focused life. It gives you grace to do that.
Yeah. Fasting illuminates the mind with the spirit of revelation. Fasting illuminates the mind with the spirit of revelation. And so God opens up revelation to us through prophetic dreams and visions. He opens up and makes alive our understanding. I think this is something too, especially in understanding his word, and why I think it's so important in the midst of fasting that you increase your time in the word, because you will start to understand things that you didn't understand outside of this 21-day fast if you put your nose in this book. Because, in the midst of the fasting, the Lord you're going to, I just think, I think kind of fasting, yes, but I just think really what it comes down to, a lot of our misunderstanding and why we struggle is because we're not humble to allow the spirit of revelation to come through us. And so in the midst of fasting, we humble ourselves and we go through humility, and God's word is going to make a lot more sense to you when you don't have pride in it, when you don't have all the things that hold you up normally.
And your revelation.
Yes.
Because in the midst of fasting, you're going to be foggy-minded.
Yeah.
It's the natural process of not eating the same things. You might have a headache. You might be confused. You might, I just can't make sense of anything today. But then, boom, in your weakness, the Lord will drop understanding of a passage to you. And the beauty of that in the midst of fasting is it wasn't you. Because a minute ago, you could barely read the verse, let alone understand it. Right. And so there's so much wonder to how that happens in the context of fasting. The Lord just showing things. And moreover, there's total biblical precedent for fasting, releasing angelic visitation and encounter, releasing dreams and visions into our life. Daniel in particular, it happened with John, and the same thing. I mean, you see it. And so I'm believing the Lord in the midst of it for those type of experiences and encounters for our community. Whereas we're pressing in together, we start seeing corporate visitation of angelic ministry, or corporate dreams where two people on opposite sides of the house come together and say, we both had the exact same dream last night. Like, I'm asking and thinking and hoping and believing the Lord is going to start doing that kind of stuff. And what most of that, not all, but a lot of that will release is about this spirit of revelation is in regards to the season and time in which we live, but the end of days, right? The eschatological revelation coming by fasting and prayer. Now, I believe we're in the last days, so anything that the Lord releases is in regards to the last days, because we're in it. So I'll read the next one. Number 4, fasting strengthens a deep sense of our spiritual identity. Fasting strengthens a deep sense of our spiritual identity. God wants us to understand who we are to Him and in Him, and we were created for some form or a kind of significance. We are designed by God to be unique and important. And as we fast, we begin to hear the voice of the bridegroom clearly. Even in relation to what we were just talking about, like as you fast, you'll start getting revelation, not only of what he's going to do, but we shared this the other week, but of who you are in him.
Yeah.
He'll show you who you are. And you know the quickest way he'll show you who you are? I love this old quote that my brother had on his website for years. 90% of being smart is knowing what you're dumb at. Okay? And he'll reveal who you are. In fasting, he'll expose your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And you start realizing, oh, I'm an angry person.
Right.
And then you're like, and then he's like, but that's not who you are.
Right.
Release that and come after me.
Oh.
He'll start because he'll expose all of your garbage in the midst of it, and it will boil to the surface. It gives you the ability to wipe that away with the grace of God and embrace who I really am. Oh, I'm your beloved. Oh, I'm the bride of the bridegroom. Maybe you.
Yeah, I really don't have anything else to add. That was really good. So I'll go into the last reward number 5. Fasting equips our bodies and enhances our physical health and spiritual intimacy. And again, like we've said, it says starvation or excessive deprivation is very unhealthy. But fasting periodically with wisdom increases our vitality. So there is a natural reward to fasting. You can't deny that. It is. Mary Alice and I actually watched a documentary, and it's not even like it's not a Christian documentary at all.
The Science of Fasting.
The Science of
I haven't watched it yet.
And it is really good. If you have
Prime
Amazon Prime Video,
Yes.
it really.
Let me write that one down. Amazon.
No, I did watch it. But
it is a really good. Again, it's not a spiritual. It's all the scientific element. And so I
treating
think
disease with fasting, basically.
yes, like basically, like there's this guy who he was older in his life, and he had, I think, some sort of liver disease, and he went through this facility in Russia where they actually do 21 days of fasting, and through that, his actual ailment in his liver was gone.
Well, and there's still, I think, 1 or 2 facilities where, based on your disease, they give you a time frame. Now you come in and they watch you, but
right.
and they make sure you get enough fluids and stuff. But that's how they treat disease.
Yeah, like it's
Crazy.
you'll see, especially if you watch that. Like just even like let's talk on just a basic level. The idea of having a fully stocked fridge is a fairly new concept in humanity.
History.
And we really think about it. When you are growing up, you're taught you need to eat every 2 hours, and you need to
snack frequently. Make sure you
yeah.
never skip breakfast. It's the most important
right.
of the day.
And all these really
Clean
what
plate
become food. They're like wise. And I was talking to Andrew and Jack about this. I think it's just the Lord and His wisdom. He didn't just give the dietary laws to Israel because He wanted to be a withholding jerk. He gave those dietary laws because if you actually look at them, they led them to lead a healthy lifestyle compared to what was going on around them. And so I think that's, there's a greater spirituality, but the Lord in His goodness, there is a definite physical benefit to fasting. And He knows that. And if His people would get that, I think we would start to see that taking place. So,
Can you say the truth again? Just
fasting equips our bodies and enhances our physical health and spiritual intimacy.
Just a note on the physical dynamics and the benefits. I just watched a video the other day. I cannot remember who it was, but it's one of those workout promo videos with the super buff dudes that are they're just
in your face.
Right. They're the specimen example of humanity. But they're promoting their workout dynamic that they've developed, and they argue, the very first line is, you've been told a lie that you have to eat every 3 hours or whatever. Even in getting super healthy, getting these guys that are super buff and whatever, CrossFit and all that dynamic, and they're like, it's not true. In fact, and their approach is they fast every day the first 6 hours of the day, which also includes from when they went to bed, right? But it's they don't eat the first 6 hours of the day.
It's one of the newest diet and
Intermittent
exercise.
fasting.
Yeah, intermittent fasting.
Right.
It's a new fad.
And so it is, I mean, we're seeing it's proven healthy in those contexts, and even in related to Israel. I mean, think about candida, yeast. Yeast in your body is okay in small doses and small amounts. Now, the amount of yeast in the diet of the West is insane since the 1970s, and there's a marked increase from the time that yeast was introduced into all of our products, food products, and the health decline of our nation. That's to look up on your own, but yeast is healthy in small portions and small amounts, but when yeast is a primary part of your diet, what does the Lord call them to do? The feast of unleavened, unyeasted bread, right? Why? There's reasons for it, but I fully believe one of them is to help their bodies kill off some of that yeast in a healthy way. Otherwise, they would be dying a lot sooner. So there's actual health, practical health things and things to it for your body, but there's also the concept of spiritual intimacy. And it just has to do with being weak and him being strong in you, and producing longevity. Even like fasting will produce longevity in the place of prayer. Not only are you able to have a healthier body, your spiritual man is healthier too for the course of it, and you're able to endure longer hours in the place of prayer, longer times in the Word, and it naturally produces a lifestyle that is more can sustain intimacy longer.
Yeah, I mean, just the note I want to make finally on that is, if you're struggling in the midst of the fast, put these rewards in front of you. Because I just think a lot of times, I can do anything if I know there's going to be some, a good thing that would come out of this result. And so I think, if you're struggling, you're like, why am I doing this? And obviously we're not totally always doing it for the rewards, but a lot of these rewards are, kind of what the heart of fasting is. And I just think it's important, look at these things and know, what I'm doing, it isn't just deprivation. It isn't just proving myself. There is, spiritual and eternal significance to it.
And it's okay to be motivated by rewards with Jesus.
Right.
When they're his rewards, actually, he knows
God
them very well.
knows how to use the carrot and the stick.
He does.
I just want to close with this. Do you have anything else to say?
Nope.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions before I do the last thing I want to do here? Any questions at all?
How'd you get so cute?
In regards to the fast.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to do this. It would be casual, but if we wanted to provide a place and time to do the consecration thing together, obviously just if people wanted to.
Especially because one element of it is communion.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk. Maybe we do that the week before on Thursday night, or the week of.
Yeah, there's value too, because your spirit is stirred, because everyone's spirits are stirred, and
Even during that 6 hours.
all that thing.
Some of it, yeah.
What do you want
We
to do?
could do that, but
You want
But
it. It's a
kind of
very
want-
solitary thing. The only element I feel because it's a very personal.
Yeah, you don't do it with other people.
Right.
I mean, you can do it in the prayer room with other
Right,
people. But
right.
you do, I think there's something to what Nate said about doing it a week in advance or more, because some of it is in regards to what you're giving
doing.
up,
Right.
what you're putting aside, and so figuring that.
It would be
process
nice
out.
to go into the 21 days having
Knowing
that stuff already figured
that
out.
makes sense.
That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to get more out of it if you do that. And so,
We could do that potentially. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We could do that next week.
and one element, like I said, one element of it is communion, where we have the elements here and people may not have that. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions pertaining to the fast? Okay.
No further questions, Your Honor.
With that in mind, I want to close by just reading what we believe the Lord has caused to focus in on, Psalm 84. So I just want to encourage you, put everything away and just focus in. Even like let these words wash over as I read them. I just let's kind of set this time apart to allow the Lord to do some things in us. So if you need to close your eyes, if you need to, whatever you do, just allow this to really sink in deep,
To the chief musician.
to the chief musician.
On an instrument of Gath, a psalm of the sons of Korah. There you go.
Come, Lord. Come, Holy Spirit. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord Almighty. My soul yearns and even faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may have her young. A place near your altar, Lord Almighty, my King and my God. Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. As they pass through the valley of weeping, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength till each appears before God in Zion. Hear my prayer, Lord God Almighty. Listen to me, God of Jacob. Look on our shield, O God. Look with favor on your anointed one. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. For the Lord God is a sun and a shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those whose walk is blameless. Lord Almighty, blessed is the one who trusts in you. God, I ask that you would give us revelation and understanding of what that will mean if we lived our lives that way, God. You'd give us revelation and understanding of what it would mean for us to long to even just be a doorkeeper in your house, God. Lord, create that desire in us. Increase our capacity for more, God. Increase our capacity for push us, stretch us, test us, refine us, God. Clean out the junk in our bodies and in our spirits, God. And help us to trust in you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.